This land right here has been fought over since at least the 10th century, the main contestants being Sweden and Russia. However, the original inhabitants were Karels, or Karelians, who had come here as early as BC to face no other resistance except wild animals. The Karelian Isthmus was an important trade post, and it provided access to the Baltic Sea. That's why, throughout their history, the Karelians were between the rock and the hard place, seeing their land taken by one kingdom and then the other. This resistance is portrayed in the coat of arms of modern-day Karelia, now a small administrative unit within Finland. It features two arms locked in a sword fight, one arm dressed in armor and another in leather, representing Sweden and Russia respectively. In the 11th century, the army of Novgorod, a Slavic principality that later became incorporated into Russia, claimed the territory as their own and levied taxes on locals. In 1293, Swedes conquered the land and pushed the Slavs out, securing possession of the trade post, where, in a quiet harbor far from high seas, they built a small fort called Viborg. For the next 400 years, Russians tried to recapture Karelia, but to no avail, until Peter the Great finally kicked the door in on the Swedes when he took Viborg, a vibrant port town and the main stronghold of Swedish defense against Russia. As the Russians advanced further west, grabbing more and more land, first Karelia fell under Russian control, and then, in 1810, Sweden ultimately lost the whole of Finland, its centuries-old domain, to the Russian Empire. In order to make sure Finns didn't side with their old master to push Russia back, Alexander I, in a gesture of free will, granted Finland a title of Grand Duchy, and with that, an unprecedented amount of freedom, giving them the first taste of independence. The following years were peaceful for Finland, as the centuries-old rivals were now out of its land and separated from each other. Finland thrived as an autonomous republic under Russian czars, enjoying an economic and cultural growth. Around this time, nationalist tendencies began to emerge among some of the Finnish cultural elite, spurred by a general trend that saw many European nations at the time cultivating their own self-identity, recording folklore, and establishing national holidays, among other things. Some Finnish historians were toying with an idea of Greater Finland, a geopolitical union of all historic Finnish and Karelian peoples and their lands under one state. That would have been all the way to Lake Onega, a Russian territory. This idea, of course, did not go beyond the stage of daydreaming, as there was simply no way for that to happen. This lasted all the way into the 20th century, when the revolution put an end to monarchy in Russia. As Finland was mostly pro-Tsar, it wouldn't put up with the new state of things and, taking advantage of all the bedlam going on in the country, declared its own independence. Too preoccupied with building their own utopia, the Soviet government recognized Finland's independence, and the nation was born. The new state border was drawn along the old boundary where the Grand Duchy had met Russia proper, along the river Sestra, or some 20 miles from St. Petersburg. Not long after, Finns got busy building fortifications across the isthmus where the shortest way to Helsinki lies. Why? It was probably because the fear that Russia would someday come back to its senses and attack never left Finns. And that is exactly what happened less than 20 years later, on November the 30th, 1939. But why did Russia attack Finland? History, according to Russia, implies that Stalin was afraid that Finland would attack first in order to fulfill those nationalist dreams of uniting historic Finnish and Karelian lands.
Финляндия – страна озер и лесов. Правящие круги Финляндии превратили эту страну и прежде всего Карельский перешеек в готовый военный плацдарм для третьих держав, для нападения на Советский Союз, для нападения на Ленинград. 8 линий укреплений были возведены возле самой нашей границы. Они составляли предполье перед основной линией Маннергейма. Линия Маннергейма, состоявшая из железобетонных и гранитно-земляных укреплений, перерезала весь Карельский перешеек от Ладожского озера до Выборгского залива. За нею на Выборгском направлении находилась вторая система железобетонных укреплений, опоясавшая Выборг могучим полукольцом. Весь этот железобетонный, стальной гранитный кулак был занесен над Ленинградом, был готов обрушиться на Ленинград в любой момент по приказу тех держав, которым было послушно правительство Финляндии. В ноябре 1939 года финская военщина приступила к активным действиям, начав с дерзких и возмутительных провокаций на нашей границе.
But even Russian sources say that Finland was within the so-called Soviet sphere of interest, when, together with Hitler, they plotted secretly to carve up Europe. The Soviets would grab one half of Poland, the Baltic states, and Finland. Whether Stalin was planning to get the whole of Finland or just move the border to safeguard Leningrad is still open to debate, but he didn't do it. Russia only ended up taking the Karelian Isthmus, and the new border was now about 150 miles from Leningrad. In 1941, Finland joined the war to recapture the isthmus, hoping things stayed that way. They didn't, and in 1944 the Red Army returned and pushed Finns back to the same border agreed on in 1940, and stopped there, except for the town of Enso, when against the orders of High Command, an army unit stationed there crossed over the border and captured the town of Enso as a trophy. Since then, the whole of Karelian Isthmus has been in Russian hands. Who knows? Thanks for watching.